This is the Leave Your Legacy podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of the Leave Your Legacy podcast. We are your hosts, Chris Norris and RJ Messenger. So excited to be doing this. RJ, we've been talking about starting this podcast for a while. This is episode 1. Why don't you give us the brief summary on how this came about?
I wish there was a cool story behind it, except for I've always wanted to share people's stories. Again, it's one of those things where people need that little bit of boost, that motivation to take that leap of faith into entrepreneurship, into quitting their job, whatever it is. And for the last couple of years, I've been doing that myself. I've been trying to tell people my story and say, listen, it's okay to leave that job to try this. Your life's not going to be over if it doesn't work, or whatever it is. And I even remember, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, Iron Empire, we did a, honor your local legend type or honor your local hero type shirt where we were giving shirts out and picking people around the community who were doing things to leave a legacy. So I think that this kind of just stems off of that idea is let's bring them in. Let's let them tell their story, whether you're a barber, whether you are an actor, whether you are a restaurant owner, I don't care what it is, because that person is going to relate to one person, at least one person listening to the podcast, hopefully. Hopefully we have that many listeners.
Totally.
To where not only their overall story, I think will motivate and inspire others, but it's that one person that's listening is like, oh my God, like I want to be a barber. I want to be an actor. I need to listen to this entire podcast and listen to this guy's story. And who knows, set something up down the road. They might end up contacting that person. They never knew who they were before.
Yeah.
So again, it's to me, it's about sharing these individual stories and everything that comes with the process of entrepreneurship.
I love it. And really the goal, we sat down to plan this out, the goal was to remind people that the legacy they leave matters, right? And that legacy can look like a lot of things. Like you said, it could be, quitting a job and leading your family, the example you set for your family, or leading the business that you own forward, or leading just a small group of friends. Like legacy isn't like defined by one single thing. It doesn't have to be this legacy that involves money. It doesn't have to be a legacy that involves, capital or anything like that. It can just be like what you're remembered by. And I think legacy is such a overused term. And I think what we want to do on the show is introduce you to people who really value that legacy and, what it looks like in their life. Because like you said, it's going to be different for everybody. So really excited to be a part of it. Kind of a crazy combination here. Yourself and me hosting together. Our story's pretty short. I met RJ on the show Undercover Billionaire. I remember obviously, like most people probably listening to the show right now, I had heard of RJ. I was familiar with his work and involvement in the community. And then our worlds collided on this reality television show.
Literally collided.
Yeah, pretty much, in kind of a stressful kind of way. I'll go first with what my first impressions were. I remember like being pretty intimidated by you. Like, oh man, that's RJ Messenger. Like I was at the brewery and we were talking. It was the first time we had met Glenn, the billionaire. And I was like, oh, cool. Like he's involved with this. And it was, I'm not gonna lie. I was a little intimidated at first, but that's
the point. I did my job then. I did my job.
Yeah. So I was a little bit intimidated, but I was like, man, I could tell just by the cast of characters, if you will, around that table, like everybody was so different.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is going to work.
Yeah. This is weird, but it's going to work somehow.
Yeah. And
we don't know who this guy Glenn is, but he did some homework.
So that made for good television. But anyway, just kind of got to know you, got involved with what you were doing and doing some work helping you with your social media as you launched your new business. And this kind of was the idea we came about with, like, hey, let's do a podcast together. So
and like I said, you kind of already were, dabbling around with a few other podcasts, especially people from the show.
Yeah.
And it just made sense. It's something I want to do for a while. With your experience with all the background stuff, and to be honest, I don't not saying that you have a lot of free time, but I don't have a lot of free time to do all the back end work. And like the one thing I learned from working with you, having you help Iron Empire and myself out with our social media and everything is how organized and well put together you are. Unlike my entire life. So I was like, this he's like the yin to my yang. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
I was real excited when we were able to kind of finally make this work. And, like you were saying from the show, I think that at first I didn't know a lot of the people on there. There's only a handful of people that I've met before. And it was really eye-opening to me because I don't want to say that I'm closed-minded, but I have my tight-knit group of people that I trust, and especially when it comes to business where, I'm not just one to reach out and, hey, I need help with social media, so I'm going to contact this guy that I don't know and I don't trust to help me with this. And the biggest thing that I took from the show is like, wow, like a guy that I didn't know, had no trust in from the beginning is now basically working, as my social media guy for my company now, because I've learned to let that trust, let him build that trust up within me, seeing what he was about in the show. Even other people, Chris Trot and stuff like that, didn't really know who he was. He did stuff for me for the new store. So, again, it's just one of those things where I learned a lot about myself and not being so, and again, it's not judgmental or closed-minded, but really opening and broadening my horizons with who I'm willing to work with and giving people a chance.
Totally.
I'm not saying I gave you a chance, but I learned from the show, again, that that you really know what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it. And
hey,
I think
anytime.
Yeah, thanks. Well, that's the end of the show. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That's
Tune
it.
back
That's
in
all I
for
wanted.
next week.
RJ said I'm awesome. That's time to end the show. No, but like that, you're right, because that's what I learned from the experience overall was, and the only time I ever really got emotional during the whole show, which luckily didn't really make it, was when Glenn told me who he was, and he said, in all his years of success and the what he's learned is to surround yourself with good people.
Yep.
And I remember thinking like, wow, like my dad said that to me when I was like 10 years old, and it still holds true. My dad is not a billionaire. This guy is, and it's like such a simple concept, but such a powerful one. Right. So what I learned from the show and from people like you and like everyone that was involved with the show was like, there's some really good people in Erie, and maybe at first glance they're intimidating,
right?
But
exactly.
Once you give them a chance and you open up a little bit, they'll open up in return, and then you learn pretty quickly that they're the kind of people you want to surround yourself. Right. And I loved how Glenn described you with what you did among many, great things you've done in the community. You're a balcony person. I thought that was cool. And I think that speaks a lot to your character. And so that's kind of why I'm hanging around with you, because I'm feeling some positive vibes.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So we're talking about legacy and, what that means to different people. And I think we complement each other well because we're both kind of in different stages of life. You're an established entrepreneur. I'm a very new entrepreneur. I'm also like in full dad mode. You're kind of, I don't want to say luckily not yet, but you're not.
Luckily not. I mean, I love kids. I can't wait for it to happen someday, but my business is my kid right now.
Right. And that's your legacy right now. Yeah. So talk a little bit about, this is part of your brand. Like legacy is part of the Iron Empire brand that you build, and it's also part of your personal brand. What does that word mean to you personally? When someone says, RJ, what's your legacy going to be? Like, why is that word so important to you?
I think that people don't realize how short life is, and the amount of time that you have during your life to leave a legacy. And it's not what I do while I'm here, it's what I'm able to leave when I'm gone and people remember me by. I heard someone else say it recently, and I was like, oh my God, because I've thought this in my head for years. And I'm like, it's kind of weird to say that. Like, I never really heard anyone else say it, so maybe I don't want to vocalize it to anyone because they're going to be like, well, that's really fucked up. Sorry. But when I die, I want my funeral to be the biggest fucking funeral to happen in the city of Erie. Mm-hmm. Because of the legacy that I was able to live by the things that I did while I was alive. I don't want to be what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, Chris, help me out.
Commemorated,
right.
Memorialized,
exactly.
Kind of like, yeah.
Exactly. And I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the things that I was able to do while I was here on this earth.
Yeah.
I'm not a firm believer of religion, stuff like that. Nothing against it. But, I think once I'm gone, and that's it. I'm not going to know what's going on, with the rest of everyone's lives. And I just want to make sure that when I'm gone, I'm not forgotten.
Totally.
And to me, that's leaving a legacy, whether it's through giving back to the community, starting scholarships, trying to change people's lives by, getting into motivational speaking, creating companies that employ, now, couple people to a couple hundred people to a couple thousand people down the road. Who knows? To me, that's the kind of legacy that I want to leave. I want to leave a legacy for, future family, and their kids and their kids and their kids. And yeah, I mean, I'm an emotional guy too. So like when I do get into it, like I get fired up, I get heated up and stuff. But I mean, I don't see why someone would want to just live your day-to-day life and then, one day disappear, and 5 years from there, you just got a few family members that remember you and miss you, and that's it.
Right.
And if that is your life, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not the life that I want to live. So again, this whole podcast, so it's not about me. It's about finding, because there's way more people than me in Erie that have that same mindset. And those are the stories I want to share. That's the point of this podcast, is to realize, wow, like, just because they're not out on social media all the time doesn't mean that they're not in the background working their ass off to leave a legacy. I've always said with the brand Iron Empire is, I don't care if you want to be the best hamburger flipper at McDonald's to the best dad in the world to the best business owner. Like, as long as you're working towards leaving a legacy for you and your family or whatever it is, I don't care what you do. Iron Empire, I mean, it's a brand for everyone. And it's the same thing with this podcast, same thing with life. Everyone should have that mindset at all times.
I agree. Yeah. It's a great point. And like you said, everybody has a different legacy. And the cool thing about, I think, this podcast and what it could do is it could force people to think about it, because it's not something you want to talk about. Like, no one wants to talk about like what their legacy going to be, because most people, when they think of legacy, they think of death, and obviously no one wants to think of like, oh, gee, obviously you've thought about it, for a while, which is great. Yeah. But I think it's going to be awesome to have people sit here and ask them like, hey, what kind of legacy do you want to live, and kind of force them to say, well, you know what, Chris, you know what, RJ, I've actually never thought about it, or I've been thinking about it for a week since you invited me on the show, and I actually know now what my legacy is more clearly. Yep. Obviously, you are very clear in what you want your legacy to be. I'm clear with mine, and as at the time of recording this podcast, we're just a few days removed from the tragedy of what happened with Kobe Bryant.
Right.
And like, when that happened, like all I could think about was, like life is so fragile, and I know that's like Hallmark greeting
cliche,
card.
But
it is, but. Man, you should think about it every day, because I can't sit here and honestly say that I'm sure Kobe Bryant was sitting there the day before that happened and making sure his legacy was solidified. Obviously, it was, because he was an amazing human and an amazing athlete.
And you can see, again, and that's a perfect point what I was trying to say, like after I die and when I die, is like that man died, and it didn't matter if he was black, white, blue, gay, straight, father, whatever.
Right.
And the whole world stopped.
Yes.
Literally the entire world stopped.
Yes.
Because of the legacy that he left.
Yeah.
And I didn't touch base. I didn't, a lot of people went to social media and like posted this, posted that, which is great. I have nothing but, from what I gathered from reading and just in my head, it's one of those things where death does not discriminate. It doesn't matter how rich you are.
Right.
Nothing. And people die every day. People die suddenly, by accident, due to health. It's going to happen. But, we look at these, famous people and people, out there that everyone knows as like, almost as like immortals, I guess, in a sense, like, oh, they're never going to die. Like, they're just living their life day to day. And then something like that happens and it brings you back to reality. It's like, if it can happen to him, it could happen to me.
Totally.
And, it hit me hard. I was out, we were at Buffalo Wild Wings, Leisha and I, eating, and it was all up on the screen that day. And I just kept watching, and like, I was getting like choked up every once in a while, because I'm thinking to myself, like, this dude was on a helicopter with his daughter, some other teammates and their parents, on the way like any other normal day.
Mm-hmm.
No worries in the world.
Right.
And just in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Now his wife and the rest of his kids are by themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it. That's life. That's, if that happens to you and you don't have, you weren't out there to leave a legacy, it happens. And what did you live for? If you don't try and leave your legacy to that extent, I don't know. It's just sad. I mean, it's a sad story
Super
overall,
sad.
but tying that into leaving a legacy, I mean, that's a perfect example.
Absolutely. And I saw something on Facebook. You said a lot of people took to Facebook and opened up about it or mourned about it. And I saw something yesterday. It was probably, I would say, one of the best things. You see a lot of garbage on Facebook, but one of the best things I had ever seen on Facebook was a post from a guy. I don't even know who he was. He didn't have like some fancy verified account, but basically the long and short of it was that, we have a country that's divided by so many things, politically, racially, so much bad stuff in our world. But the death of someone like Kobe Bryant instantly brought everybody together.
Yeah,
like it didn't matter, like you said, if you were white, black, Jewish, Muslim, Republican, or Democratic, you mourned the loss of Kobe Bryant because he was a human being, and it kind of reminds us that we all are like connected human to human, because I don't know what Kobe believed. I don't know. I don't care. I don't care if he was black, white. I don't care. He was a human that you mourn for. And like the guy, what he was basically trying to say is like, for those 24 hours or whatever, the country put aside all the political garbage,
and bullshit,
and we all kind of mourn together.
Yeah.
Now, granted, on Monday morning, everyone picked back up and we're talking about the impeachment and everything else. But in that moment, man, it's just like, there's hope that humans really can like connect and talk about their legacy and leave legacies that last. Because Kobe Bryant, unfortunately, the circumstances, but it was like a strong reminder that having conversations like this, and hopefully having conversations with the people we have on our show, it's something to think about, because it's important. Because you want, like you said earlier, you want your family, your friends, and everyone you have ever come in contact with to remember you for something besides your bank account, your accolades, whatever it is, at the end of your life. That's the stuff that matters. So
and I don't want to make this the Kobe Bryant podcast, but another point with him is he wasn't done trying to leave a legacy.
Right.
He was what, 40s, 50s,
41, yeah.
And that just goes to show, no matter how successful you are, whether you're just starting, whether you're as successful as can be, you're never going to be done, and you never know when. You're never going to be done on your watch, like in your head, but you also never know when you're going to be done with life, where it's just gone in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So the longer you sit around, like if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, man, like I really want to leave this job, man, you can be that Kobe Bryant dude driving your car and getting in a car accident tomorrow, and you never did it, and you never took that leap of faith or made that jump to do it, and you'll never know if it would have ever worked or not.
Absolutely.
You would have never known if you could have been the next Kobe Bryant, because you wanted to sit around and wait.
Right.
So I mean, we're not here to try and convince these listeners to quit your job and go find out what you want to do with your life. But if you're on that ledge, if you listen to this podcast, our goal is to make you get off that ledge and start working towards it.
Yeah, totally. That's the goal, really, is to even just force the questions. I mean, my background was when I first met you, I was still in a corporate job and surrounded myself with people like yourself and other local entrepreneurs. And I was asking those questions at the time. Like, I could sit in this job for 30 years and make a bunch of money, have a sweet retirement, probably have a good career. But then you start asking, like, well, that doesn't really tie into my legacy. Yeah. Like, again, my kids and my wife, my family is not going to say, well, yeah, but he had such an amazing job. If I'm not happy in the job, I'm bringing that home. And then you look and you say, do you really think Chris was ever really fulfilled? Because, I mean, he worked his butt off, but he never really, like, was that fulfilling for him? So, like, that's important if you're in a job where you're just kind of questioning, like, is this what I want to do? Taking a leap of faith, whatever it looks like in your life. Maybe it's taking a pay cut to try something different, or maybe it means moving up. You've always just been in middle management. You're ready to take the jump to, like, I'm tired of sitting around having someone else tell me what to do. Whatever that leap of faith looks like, it can be different. For me, it was stepping away from a corporate job and going out on my own. And I'm still like only 6 or 8 months into that, but I'm trying to build my legacy and having a 3-year-old at home. I was just talking to somebody today at the office about this. I'm like, I just figured like when my kid's old enough to have conversations like this, the world's going to look so much more different. Like college might not even be a thing. The job market's going to be so much different. I want my legacy professionally to be, my dad, he bounced around, did a couple random things. He did a podcast with this guy that had all these tattoos and he did all this random.
At first I was confused. I really thought you were talking about your dad. I'm like,
no.
What the hell?
Well, my son, to say that about me.
Gotcha, yep.
But like, I think our kids someday are going to look back and they're going to be more impressed by the risks we took and the kind of unorthodox paths we take rather than our generation, like our parents, God bless them. Like they've worked the same jobs for 30, 40 years. I know
Yep.
your dad's been a devoted employee in the city, right?
Yeah.
And
Pretty
my
much his
dad's
whole
worked the
life.
same job 38 years or some crazy thing
Yep.
like that because that's how they were like raised.
That's how they were raised, right?
And our generation's a little different. Like there's so many more opportunities out there to leave a different legacy.
Right. And it's crazy, you said you did the same thing, is how many I hear so many stories, especially listening to other podcasts where people are getting interviewed and they're leaving 6-7 figure salary jobs to go and make $70,000-$80,000 a year, but it's because they're able to do what they love and they're giving up that one because their bank account could be as big as they want it to be or as big as it is, but they're not fulfilling themselves and their happiness. And it's one of those things where, not only like what legacy do you want to leave, but like what is the definition of success to you?
Mm-hmm.
If your definition of success is just being wealthy and being able to live in a nice house and this and that and work, 12 hours a day for a big company, then guess what? You're successful. There's nothing wrong with that. My definition of success is being able to do what I love and work 80 hours a week for myself rather than 40 hours a week for someone else. And if it takes me 5, 10, 15 years to get to my real definition of success is being wealthy by doing what I love, then so be it. I'd rather take that long route, not knowing if I'm going to make it another 5, 10 years, my life, but it's a risk you take though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's just, kind of a glimpse of, again, how much bigger this podcast isn't just two people talking and trying to get subscribers and listeners. We really want to do this and bring people in. Again, this isn't about you and I. We can talk about our stories here and there, but I can't wait to interview some of the people that we have lined up, including our first guest, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah. It's going to be great.
But again, I think, we'll kind of keep bouncing, back and forth off each other. When I was working full time for the city, I worked there for 7 years, and I had just started Iron Empire, started right out of the house, and it started to grow and grow and grow to where I went back from working first shift for the city and I went back to third shift. So I had less sleep. I can have less sleep and wake up early and have more time during my day to do Iron Empire to then go to work night, 40 hours a week as a garbage man, driving a garbage truck. And one night it just hit me. I sat in the parking lot in my truck, and no offense to any of my friends that are city workers, if you're listening, I just sat in my truck, 10:30, 10:45, getting ready to, punch in by 11 o'clock. And I'm just watching guy after guy just walk into work. And I'm like, and they're guys that are in their 40s and 50s, some of them in their 60s that could have retired by now. And they're walking. I'm like, just knowing who they are, knowing their personalities, I'm like, these aren't happy people. There is some of those people that go to work and they're happy and they love their job. All for it. You made it in life. Like, you're where everyone wants to be. But the majority of the people, like, they weren't happy. They don't enjoy going to work, and they did it night after night after night. And I was already there for 7 years, being 25, 26 years old. I got another 30 years of this, and this is what I'm going to do. And it just one night, and it clicked, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Can't do it. Figured it out, sat down with, another business mentor, with my ex-wife at the time who helped me start the business, and said, I'm ready to get out of this and finally jump into this entrepreneurship thing, whatever the hell that even means. So again, it's taking that leap of faith and never knowing where you're going to end up, and where I am now. If I would have never took that leap of faith, I would never be where I am today, and have the opportunities to be where I could be 5-10 years from now. Same thing with you. If you would have never left your, cushion job with,
Was it Erie Insurance?
Insurance, right? Yeah. And I mean, people would kill to get in Erie Insurance.
Oh, it's a great company. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. And same thing with the city. People would, give anything to get that 9 to 5, that pension, the salary, the benefits, the health insurance, all that. And you really got to be a little effed up in the head to just throw that all away to pursue this.
Sure. People give you some funny looks when you tell them, right?
Oh, I got a lot of funny looks. I mean, I get funny looks every day, but I got a lot that day. Walking into City Hall saying I was done. But yeah, I mean, the moral of the story is, everyone has a story to tell, especially the people who have taken this road. And the goal is to give them the platform to tell their story,
right,
and to motivate and inspire people. So, I think, real quick, you touch base about like me and my business. If we can, talk a little bit about the new business you started. You just said how you kind of just starting us off. I was kind of there for it. You're starting a website, showing me stuff, and I knew right away like it was great. I knew you were onto something, and I think you bring something different to the table for social media. What would you even call yourself?
Well,
technically. Go ahead, take the floor, Chris.
Well, we're still working on my elevator pitch here, but no, it's for me.
Me too. I'm still working on that.
it's a refining process, but no, you're right. I want people to do and think about social media differently. Is basically because I've seen too many people abuse it or misuse it. So abusing it is like measuring your worth and your value based on like what other people say about you, how many likes your photos get, all that garbage that happens on social media platforms. Then misusing it are like the people that are also like the business owners that they don't get it. Like they don't use it the right way. They just don't know how. So
You're
like there's the
right.
abuse and the misuse. The abuse is more of a personal level, like, hey, friend, or hey, son, do not ever measure your worth based on like how many followers you have. Please don't do that. Because someday, honestly, social media will probably be gone.
Oh yeah,
it'll be on to the next thing. And if your life is leaning on that, you're going to be in trouble.
What's, not to cut you off, but there's one of those memes or whatever the hell you want to call those things out there, and it was like, one day Instagram disappears and all you models are out of jobs type thing.
Right.
Like, what are you going to do?
Right.
What are you going to do?
Exactly.
What do you have other than being, and no offense again, no, because they're making a lot. I wish I could go on and post half naked pictures of myself and make as much money as they are. I can guarantee you it wouldn't happen. I might get flagged or something, but right?
Well, don't do it while I'm running your social media accounts,
right.
please.
Chris, hey, can you post this for me?
Oh man, but yeah, I think people they abuse it, and then for the business owners too, they misuse it. And I want to help both. I want to try to find the medium between both. So my biggest thing is like, how can people just share their story? And that can be your personal story, or that can be the story of your business, but people are drawn to story. Like our BS meters are through the roof now. When you scroll through your feeds, it's ad, stock photo, fake, influencer model. It's all fake. So if people can tell authentic stories, like the ones they're going to tell on this podcast, how do we find them a platform to tell it? There's so many platforms nowadays. Like half the time there's new ones coming out every year that you're like, you got a video to tell, then you should be on YouTube, or you just want to talk, like then you should probably be on a podcast. So that's my goal with what I'm doing with my business. And, so far I've had people that are just like, help me tell my story. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the biggest thing is I just want to help people tell their story. I don't want to sell. If someone comes to me and say, hey, we need sales to be up, can you do it through social media? Nope. That's not what I want to do. I think if you let me help you tell your story,
It'll organically, that's
yes,
what it'll give you.
You'll get your sales. So that's my shtick, my 5-minute elevator pitch. But yeah, it's been awesome. I've kind of been working on the brand and finally took the leap and made it official like a couple weeks ago. So,
right. And
yeah,
if they haven't heard of it,
Revox.
Yep.
REVOX, it's actually Latin for another voice. So helping people,
I love it.
Find their voice on social media. Because it's like, if you look at the kind of people I want to work with, you're like, I can't tell who you are because your voice is all over the place. 1 minute you're trying to be this to these group of people. The next minute you're trying to be super mom to this group of people. And then you're trying to be super fit dad over here. Like, just be yourself. Find your voice. That's
and I mean, you, for the little time you've kind of taken it on full time. I mean, some of your clients so far, I mean, you work with this place called Iron Empire.
Yeah,
this place called
they're
Underdog
tough,
Barbecue.
man. Yeah.
No, but a couple of the other ones. I
Yeah.
mean, you do stuff with
Erie Downtown Development Corporation. Yep. It's been great. That was my biggest thing when I left corporate, and I think the reason I got the itch was because I want to have like a variety of people. Like I want to be bouncing so many balls at once that, like diversity, meeting new people. Like if you'd asked me a year ago, I'd number one even know who you were or even have anything to do with your social media presence. I would have been like, oh, no way. But now I get to like, clothing, barbecue, redevelopment, higher education. Like I have so many different clients, and it's good for me because talk about like when I go to bed at night, man, I hit the pillow hard because like your brain is fried from and you own a business. Like you're just so many. I try to just dedicate each day to a different client because it's like it's hard to flip from like clothing brand to downtown cityscaping and stuff.
It's so funny you say that because that's I think what I'm going to start doing with my involvement with Iron Empire, obviously, my involvement with Underdog Barbecue, my involvement with now I'm creating a personal brand this year that we'll talk about down the road, this podcast being one of them and everything else, where I'm trying to fit all that into one day and doing it day after day after day, where, like you said, I think the best way to go about it is, okay, Tuesday and Thursday are dedicated to the, to Underdog Barbecue. Yep. Monday, Wednesday, Friday is dedicated to this. My own free time before or after work is dedicated to my personal brand.
Right.
And really, I mean, when it comes down to it, your mind's going a million different directions all at the same time. And everyone at my store makes fun of me for it. So being organized, having that schedule, I mean, that's big. And I mean, with you, it's like with me, there's all this stuff going on. But with you, like, you've got all these people and they all have stuff going on. So it's like, to me, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of it all, but I think it's good for me. And like I said, I've hit a home run with as far as like the first clients I've got have all been like rock star clients. And I'm like, wow, I couldn't have probably been more lucky as I started. I figure if I'm going to do this, I'm probably going to have to do some things I don't really enjoy, but it hasn't been that way at all. And the show has certainly helped me. You have certainly helped me. But it's been a great experience so far. And speaking of like your brand, like, you just opened a new store, and that was a great experience for me. Like behind the scenes, like that was the first like press conference I ever set up, and like helping you launch your new store was a great learning experience for me. And again, like the fact that you kind of were like, Chris, do your thing. And that was awesome. But talk about, I mean, it's been about 2 months already, but your new store's open and things are going well. Your legacy is building.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, again, I think that we can sit here and speak hours about our own personal, trials and triumphs of business and life. But, I sort of feel like there was a chance I wouldn't even be here today, and Iron Empire wouldn't even be existing. It was early last year. Now I can look back and admit and say I went to some sort of depression, and I was ready to throw away the business. I was ready to throw away it all. I went back down to City Hall and said, first full-time job comes up, call me if you want to consider me. And I'm ready to get out of this. I don't know what it was, mixture of maybe different stuff going on, stress from the business, taking it over, 100%, after my ex-wife left the business. And, I met someone, who wanted to help, and they said, don't fucking quit. Like, don't quit. Like, let's meet up. Let's talk about stuff. And that was kind of a little transition and helped me go through this week, get through this week, helped me kind of get back on track. And then boom, I meet Glenn. And even though I didn't know who Glenn was until the end of the show, that was a life-changing experience. And if I would have quit and would have quitted if I would have quit when I wanted to, and if I would have walked down to City Hall and they would have said, you know what, there's a job right now, take it.
Take it, yeah.
In my mind, I was ready to take it that day. Guess what? I wouldn't be now part owner of an Underdog Barbecue, brand. I wouldn't be part owner of Iron Empire, this new clothing store, with a self-made billionaire. So, I mean, it's one of those things where like life is fucking crazy. And sometimes it'll beat you down, and just don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't give up. But yeah, so here we are, just open in November, and it's great. Good. I got a great team of people. Never had this many employees in my life. It's weird. Stressful being responsible for that many people's paychecks, I guess. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're the ones. I mean, now, before, if I wanted to go on a vacation or leave for a weekend, it's like, what happens at Iron Empire? I only have like 2 people working for me,
right?
And they really don't know how to run the business. Now it's like I can be here for 2 hours, and guess what? Iron Empire is still a thing. Still, everything's moving correctly, and they all learned very quick. And that was one of the biggest things I took from meeting Glenn in the show is, again, surrounding yourself with good people.
Yeah.
And I found the best of the best. I found the best, art guy. I found the best salesperson. I found the best retail manager. I found the best screen printer, and everyone else, and said, all right, this is the business. Let's do this. Let's figure out how we can make this work together. And 2 months in, I mean, if I need to leave for a couple hours for a meeting or a day, I don't even worry about it. I can walk out stress-free and knowing that they can handle everything going on. But the location's great. This is our biggest, obviously, holiday season we've ever had.
Nice.
You know, everything from the new location, opening up right before Black Friday, the holidays.
Yeah.
You know, Iron Oxygen being right next door. That was a big move. If it wasn't for that gym being there, wouldn't even be interested in that location. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the rest of the year holds for the company.
Sure.
We have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of big events we're doing. So yeah, we'll see.
That's awesome. That's what I love about your brand. And again, like you said, your brand is for everybody. But a year ago, before I educated myself more about who you were and what your brand stood for, to me, Iron Empire was like out of my league as far as a brand. You know, like people that are, you know, bodybuilders and like, you know, I just didn't feel like I fit into the Iron Empire brand.
And we get that a lot.
But once you actually take the time to, you know, walk into the store or meet the person behind the brand, you understand that like that your brand is built on reminding people, no matter what their legacy is, whether they want to be known for how strong they are, whether they want to be known how amazing of a parent they were, or how awesome of a entrepreneur they are. That's really all your brand is, and your clothing reflects that. Like some of the stuff you've got in the store, you know, the t-shirts and the quotes on the shirts, everything. Every time you send me a new mock-up or a shirt to post, I'm always like, yeah, this is spot on. Like this, it's very consistent with the whole concept of this podcast and everything. Like when you read it, it gets you fired up to think about, that's what I want to be remembered for. That's the legacy I want to leave. So it's cool to see that trickle down all the way to your store.
And it's, you know, I already have an idea, you know, what podcasts on the road talk about branding. Because, I mean, that's exactly what I did. And before I even understood what branding was and what entrepreneurship was, I was doing that for this business. Like when I started selling right out of the house, so 5 years ago, with 3 T-shirts and some designs, I knew in my head, I don't want this just to be a T-shirt company. I want Iron Empire to be, you know, a T-shirt company, but a a gym, a studio, a record label. I don't care what it is, and it's branding. And in my head, I didn't realize like how important that was at the time, but I got lucky. You know, I got lucky with how everything lined up and fell into place. And like you said, it all starts with just a couple sayings on a shirt, and now, you know, we have an opportunity to leave a legacy with everything we're doing.
Yeah.
So.
And I think you've got the perfect audience. You know, we've got the perfect audience because I think legacy and story combine really well. You know, the story coincides with the legacy. You know, if I can help people find a platform to share their story and their story points back to the legacy they want to leave and the message you're trying to teach, I think it could be, you know, a pretty good combination for not only the people we get to talk to on the show, but the people who are hopefully going to listen.
Right.
You have a little bit of a wider reach right now, influential reach on social media than me, but man, I'm just excited to hear from the kind of people that are going to listen to the show. It's going to be a gamut of different people. So,
right.
I think speaking of that, like the show moving forward, I'm excited about some of the guests, you know, between our inner circle of friends, both locally, regionally, and hopefully nationally. You know, I want to get some good guests, and we already got a few guests lined up. We don't want to give away too many of the folks, but we have one that's actually going to be a huge part of the podcast. He's helping us with some of our background music and our bumper. You probably heard him at the top of the show here. Why don't you tell us, RJ, about our first guest?
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Me too.
So I'm excited to announce that C. Brown, right here from Erie, Pennsylvania, is going to be our very first guest on the show. And it's funny because when we were first talking about this, and actually even to back up before that, I brought this up to C. Brown probably a year ago, and I said, man, like this idea of doing a cool podcast, like you have a great voice, great personality, like what do you think? And with how busy things got, it just like fell off the table, and never got it back a hold of him, kind of just let the idea go through the cracks. And then everything with you came up, and I'm like, man, I kind of told C. Brown about this, and then you brought up, hey, like, listen, like the studio, this and that, we know how to do everything. Then it just worked out. So when we started talking about first guests, I think both you and I were like, C. Brown.
Oh, yeah.
He's leaving a legacy for sure. Everything is involved with a good friend of mine. He's done stuff for Iron Empire countless times. Is always the first one. I can say, hey, listen, we're doing a photo shoot today. Can you be here at 5 o'clock? I'm going to be 4:49.
Nice.
I'll be there in 10 minutes type guy, you know? If I work, I'm going to call off work and be there. He's that reliable. But, I mean, just to tell you about him, I mean, you're talking, you know, he's a hip-hop artist, a journalist, producer, voiceover artist, actor, model, creative writing teacher, And yes, I literally had to read all of that off of paper because I was sitting here trying to come up with everything he's done.
Yeah.
And I know that's not even a full list. It goes on. But those are just some of the top things. I think he won around 12 awards for different things around Erie, whether it's been his music or whatever it is. So he's been, acknowledged for everything he's done. And, at the end of the day, he's perfect guest and he's perfect first guest because just right now, everything he's done, he could stop today and go work at McDonald's for the rest of his life. But everything he's done up until this day, he's left a legacy.
Oh, totally.
He would be the most famous person to ever work at McDonald's if that were to happen. So, C. Brown, once you listen to this, consider that maybe. But yeah, no, I'm super excited. And actually, if you listen to the podcast, probably throw out there that he actually produced and did our intro for the show.
Yep.
Again, it's a perfect fit for us. He did the voiceover, he wrote the music himself, and we couldn't be more happier than to have him really be the
like the voice,
the
music,
voice, the music of the show, and then be our first guest on top of that.
Wow.
So I'm real excited for it. And I can guarantee you that's going to be one you don't want to miss. Probably down the road, I'm going to have one of those days where I'm in a bummed, shitty mood or something like that. I'm going to need cheered up or some motivation. I'm going to be like, wait a second, I did this podcast with C. Brown where he motivated the hell out of me the entire time. I want to go listen to that.
Yeah.
This is going to be the podcast to listen to. So, I'm real excited about that.
Me too. I'm excited to honestly sit back and let someone else talk, just
right. Oh,
ask these
I'm
guys
tired.
questions.
My mouth, been drinking all this water the whole
You'll
time.
probably
so my mouth
never
is dry.
hear us talk this much again, hopefully. But we wanted to lay the groundwork for our vision for the show, a little bit about ourselves, but really moving forward, man, we want to have quality people on the show with quality stories that want to leave, a quality legacy for their lives. And I think C is the perfect person to kick that off. And I'm excited to learn more about him. The first time I really obviously I heard his music, but a big moment for me that I remember about him is he did the intro music. I feel like honored that he's doing ours because he did an intro song for the Erie homecoming event they had here in Erie, Pennsylvania a few months ago. And there were thousands of people there, and he was on the stage, and his music was just really good. So to have him doing like our podcast intro, that's big time. So we're honored to have him as part of the show.
Yeah, and I got some stories. I'm gonna save them for the episode with him. I got some stories, and how blew my mind. I thought he was the most quiet kid ever. I'm like, who's this dude who just doesn't talk? No one, just stands there by himself every time I see him. And then boom, oh, you do this. Oh, you do this. Yep. Who the hell are you?
That's how
Where'd
they
you come from?
Right? The quiet ones are the dangerous ones.
Yeah. And just to touch on it too, I mean, it's people like him, especially local people that I want to put out there. But I want to interview people all around the country if we could, around the world. I mean, if the time comes for that, already number one on the top of my list, Mr. Glenn Stearns.
Yes.
Already, unless he's able to come to Erie, get him on the phone, do one over the phone.
Yeah.
There's a few people on my list that I've met over the years. Some, somewhat recognizable people that I plan on trying to get onto the show. So it's just not going to be local people. But for the most part, we do want to highlight those local people leaving a legacy. So
I agree. Let's do it. So if you want to be on the show or you want to talk about your legacy, somebody that's that you work with or it's in your family that you're like, you've got to meet RJ and Chris. We'd love to have people on the show. We'd at least love to hear a little bit about your story. We could share it on the show, share it on our social media accounts. However, we want to make sure we feature as many people as possible. So make sure you can get a hold of us by emailing info@leaveyourlegacypodcast.com. Yep. Or maybe you are amped up about the show and you want to be a part of it from a sponsorship perspective. We'd love to feature your product, your business, your service somehow on the show. Definitely also send an email to info@leaveyourlegacypodcast.com. And we'll be getting our website up and running, our social accounts going soon as well. So we're excited to move forward. First guest, C. Brown. But this is going to be fun.
All right. Good job, Chris. You did good today. Thanks for
trying to lead the way.
That's
here.
it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm excited. Again, just to meet people. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So.
And again, thank you for listening. If you listened today, the first one, don't forget, subscribe, share it, follow our social media pages, the business pages, whatever it is. And don't be scared to email us. If you think you want to be a guest and think you not have what it takes, but if you have a story that, deserves to be told, I guess, don't hesitate to email us. So
awesome. Well, we'll see everyone next time on the Leave Your Legacy podcast.